So, the other thing about the Down syndrome is I heard the national funding for autism or other special needs is much higher than Down syndrome. Even the government or the government in the top level do not have the awareness that other special conditions have. So they have less or even not any offer from the national government. So do you think that needs to be improved or some kind of awareness there also?
Yeah, so that's a really great point. I would say absolutely. And there actually has been some growth in that area recently. So in the last 5 years, there has been new funding that's come through the NIH, the National Institute of Health, specifically to focus on research around the care of people with Down syndrome. $21 million, 21 because of obviously Down syndrome and trisomy 21. And that was because of advocacy, families and self-advocates going to Congress and saying we're important too. But really important story. Once again, when we care appropriately for those with Down syndrome, we actually care for all of us. Why is research within the Down syndrome community important? How does it actually impact all of us? Well, obviously, when we care for those within the community, it helps them live more fuller and thriving lives, and they get a chance to really impact us. But also, one of the things that is a challenge in Down syndrome, we know that Alzheimer's disease is very common as those with Down syndrome age. Starting at age 40, and as they age, the proportion of individuals with Down syndrome who develop Alzheimer's is very significant. When we actually think about how do we diagnose and then how do we treat Alzheimer's within this group, we will actually develop the keys to how do we treat Alzheimer's in a global community. And so I think, once again, it's a value that when we care for certain people well, it actually trickles down and impacts everybody. So I think it is important for us to think about how do we fund the care of all people.
It's a win situation for advocates in Down syndrome group. So what other question is what is the main cause for the Down syndrome in first place, especially in the US population or anywhere else, even though it's like a genetic information change, but what is the root cause? Do you have any root cause, if any?
Yeah, that's a great question. So while Down syndrome is a genetic disorder, meaning that it's based on a difference in our genes, meaning that we have an extra 21st chromosome, most of the time, so greater than 95% of the time, it's not necessarily something that is, genetically transmitted from mom and dad in the traditional sense, meaning that when you have one child with Down syndrome, the chances of you having another child with Down syndrome doesn't go dramatically up. It's not that one parent carries the gene and so that there's a high level of risk every single time. Often what happens is that when our genes are splitting, what typically happens is our cells have 46 chromosomes, and when we're making new cells, those chromosomes split. And when we make sex cells, actually we have the chromosomes split into half. Sometimes that 21st chromosome hangs on so that usually it's within the egg. That extra 21st chromosome, just by accident, that egg has an extra 21st chromosome. And so when mom and dad's cells come together to make a new person, there's an extra 21st chromosome. And that is a random event. We know that as people age, meaning the older maternal age you have, the chance of having a child with Down syndrome goes up. That's just because the chance of that error occurring is higher in that age group. Once again, it has nothing to do with what anybody did or any kind of exposure. It's a random event. And so we don't think of it as something that people should worry about, that they did something or they had an exposure that led to their child having Down syndrome. It is a unique aspect of who they are that occurs just as the genes are splitting. There is that small group of people, like I said, less than 5%, which have truly what we think of as a genetically motivated form of Down syndrome, something we call a translocation. It's where a parent has one of their chromosomes that actually, instead of being just one chromosome, have two chromosomes stuck together. And that parent carries that in all of their genes. And every time they have a child, there's a higher risk that that child will have that extra 21st chromosome.
Okay. So you're saying there is no male or female relation to Down syndrome. It's only when women of certain age, the chances are more, but there is no specific.
And just to also be clear, while there is increased probability that you'll have a child with Down syndrome, the older you are, That doesn't mean that younger people can't have Down syndrome.
So, like, is there any age mark that like tells us like, okay, beyond this age, probably the probability increase 50%, 100% or something like that?
Yeah, so it's not that high.
Okay.
So we always think that, what you'll notice is that when you're meeting your OBGYN, if you're a woman who's over the age of 35, they may recommend some extra testing to be able to see if your child has Down syndrome. That's just because that's kind of one of the transition points where that possibility goes up. But like I said, I will say that actually more families that are younger have children with Down syndrome than families that are older. And the reason why is that younger people are having more children. And so even though their probability is lower, there's more families out there that are younger that have children with Down syndrome. So once again, I would say it doesn't mean you should be afraid. If you're older and you have a child or you're pregnant, I think it's just good to get all the information you need to be able to make a decision as a family what to do.
All resources and contact information you can find in our description of this video.